Look here, we got Dr. Cool in there.
Yes,
We got Chaplain Brown. They can say hi to you. Y'all got 55 seconds. Talk to
We
me.
got 55
Go,
seconds.
Dr. Crew.
Well, listen, it's a joy to be with you all again this evening. I'm so grateful to have my friend and brother, Chaplain Carl Brown here.
Absolutely.
We call him the Brown Bomber.
The folks rolling with us, they definitely know what that means. That's an inside joke. I'm telling you. So it's good to be back here live in the studio, having
Make
an
sure
opportunity to share.
Make sure you bring your mic in front of you.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. It's good to be back live here in the studio to share some great things and be just with some great men, some great brothers. And so glad to be back here. Also, as we're filming live on this YouTube or just Facebook page, we also have the YouTube going as well. And so we're going to get ready to make this thing do what it do.
Amen. Yes, sir. Glad to be with you all again. Thanks for joining us.
Get your Bibles and notepads, y'all. Here we go. All right, everybody. So welcome back into the broadcast. And no doubt about it, I am the fly on the wall. Let's get over to the host of Making a Difference Through Mentorship. That is Dr. Gregory Crew. What's going on, Doctor? How you doing?
Well, Stu, you know, this is the day that the Lord has made. We shall rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you so much, Stu, for allowing us to be here, being here with us, as you say, the fly on the wall. But we're just grateful that you're here, my brother. I'm so glad to have my friend and brother here with us tonight, Chaplain Carl Brown.
Yes,
and to all of you
indeed.
that have tuned in, we know that some of you it's dinner time, it's time to get the kids together, but you've tuned in, and we're grateful because we're convinced that God is using each one of us. And this is the nature of the segment of making a difference through mentorship.
Yes, sir.
And you make a difference one life at a time.
Absolutely.
And you and I have been charged by God to make that difference. So we want to go ahead and get started. You may remember Chaplain Brown was with us last month. For the first time, won't be the last time. I'm so grateful because God has connected us. We're partners and co-laborers in the ministry. He has a master's degree in leadership, a master's degree in clinical therapy. He also has a master's degree. He's currently in the marriage and family life clinical therapist program at Texas A&M University. He was in the Marine Corps for 12 years. We're not gonna hold that against him in his army town. In his army town, we're not gonna hold that against him. But he was also in the Navy. We're not gonna hold that against him either, because he finally got saved and joined the army. Praise the Lord. So we're glad to have him with us. He's married to a dynamic woman of God, Melissa. She is a preaching and teaching machine. We got to get her up here. And they have 3 children. So we're just grateful for our friendship and partnership in advancing the cause of the kingdom, making a difference through mentorship. Chaplain Brown, we want to get right at it. We got a ways to go, my brother.
Absolutely.
Glad to have you.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Dr. Crew, for allowing this conversation to be furthered.
Well, all right, here we go. Stu, we want to get started again with our topic and theme for this evening, which is a kingdom mindset. You may recall last month, we talked about what's on your mind.
Yeah.
Right.
And certainly when we look around our country today, there's a lot that's on our minds, the things that we've seen, the things that we've heard and understood, and then the challenges of life itself. But yet tonight we want to kind of continue that dialogue, Chaplain, you know, with a kingdom mindset.
Absolutely.
Because we want the king's mindset to be on our mind.
Absolutely.
We want to always have the king on our mind. So we're gonna get started right away. So when we talk about a kingdom mindset for us as the people of God, Revelations 19:16 declares that Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. To have a kingdom mindset begins with the fact that Jesus is our King, and he is to rule and reign over everything in our lives. And if we're going to have a kingdom mindset, there are 4 things. You got to have a king. First of all, there must be subjects over whom the king reigns. And then there must be ordinances by which the king rules over his subjects, and then the territory. Well, the territory over which Jesus rules and reigns is our hearts, our emotions, our intellect, and our will.
Absolutely.
When we consider the word heart in the Old and New Testament, it simply means our character and the way that we think. So when Jesus was talking about having a kingdom mindset, he was talking about the responsibility to think like he thinks. And so tonight we want to just cover some topics, a few questions, Chaplain, that hopefully will help us to be able to understand the priority and necessity of establishing a kingdom mindset or thinking like the king thinks. And when we talk about a mindset, we can simply define a mindset as or a mind that is set, a mind that's set on what? The King's agenda. Our mindset, a mindset may be defined as our collection of thoughts and beliefs that shape our thought habits.
Absolutely.
And our thought habits affect how we think, what we feel, and what we do.
Yeah.
And so our mindset further impacts how we make sense of the world and how we make sense of ourselves. So, Chaplain,
right.
First question tonight: how do we establish the kind of mindset that Jesus had about the kingdom agenda and the change within us as servants of the King? How do we do that? How do we establish a kingdom mindset in times like these?
Yes. Well, first I want to say that you made two beautiful statements, Dr. Crew. And again, thank you for allowing me to be with you on the show, my brother. The kingdom, first you said the kingdom of God is not going to be seen in church buildings. We had this conversation before, that it's not seen in church buildings, it's not going to be seen in Los Angeles or any other place, or Dallas, any of that, right? So, but in the second statement you said, when we talk about a mindset, we can simply define it as a mind that is set on what the mind believes. And so when I think about that, Dr. Crew, several people come to mind. You know, I enjoy learning stories about those individuals who have gone before us, who have had to deal with challenges and adversity, and I think we can learn some great practical applications from them. And so the people who come to my mind is Dr. King come to my mind.
This is Black History Month.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, it also Gandhi,
Right.
you know, Mahatma Gandhi, and also Viktor Frankl. And I say that because, I mean, Dr. King was a Christian.
Right.
However, a lot of his philosophy was guided by what he learned from Gandhi.
That's right.
With the non-anxious presence, and how Gandhi influenced a nation based upon non-violent approach. And I think that's key. He had everything to do with his mind. To be able to face that kind of adversity and difficulties and what he had to endure required a transformation of mind. His values, his character, his non-anxious presence in the face of adversity transformed a nation.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about that, and I said, you know what, the substratum, the foundation of his beliefs was shaped by his thoughts. Right. And so whatever a man thinks about, he becomes, or she becomes.
That's right.
Absolutely. So we become what we think about. The other person other than Dr. King and Gandhi is Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl is the author of Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
You know, Viktor Frankl, he spent years in a concentration camp during Hitler's tyranny.
Yeah.
How did this, Dr. Crew, how did this man survive that type of heinous treatment and not give up hope?
Right. Not give up
Many
hope.
times, yes, that's right. Many times he wanted to die. He didn't think he would make it. In the midst of despair, desolation, and depression, he transformed his mind, and as a result, he made it through some of the most dark, desolate days of his life. So you asked me this question: how do we transform the mind? Transforming the mind, first of all, starts within.
Yeah.
It starts within, doing some searching and facing some of those challenges that push us to the limits of extreme. And in that place, we begin to make some decisions to say, how do I begin to make the journey out?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when you talk about, you know, again, the transforming of the
Yeah.
mind, and certainly for us as believers, as Christians, as pastors, elders, leaders in
Absolutely.
our church, we understand Paul's admonition in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Don't be conformed to this world.
That's
Don't
right.
think like the world thinks.
That's right.
But be transformed
That's
by
right.
the renewing of your mind.
Yeah.
And so when you reflect upon Paul's statements there, again, how often do I need to have my mind transformed? How often do I need to have my mind renewed?
Absolutely.
Because the word transformed, it carries the meaning, once again, of character. Once again, it carries the meaning of character. It carries the meaning of a metamorphosis.
Absolutely.
How often do I need to have my mind renewed? Well, every time I have a negative thought or negative experience. And so when we talk about a kingdom mindset, it's important that, and certainly our generation will never forget the acts of violence and terrorism committed on January 6th.
Absolutely.
At our nation's capital. And
Absolutely.
yet, there are other acts of violence
Yeah.
and terrorism that are happening daily, according to this recent study by the University of Texas at Austin School of Social Work. This study states that Texas reportedly ranks first in the nation for active human trafficking cases or modern day slavery. That blows my mind, Chaplain.
That's horrible.
Modern day slavery, most of us thought that was over. But it's never stopped.
No.
It's never stopped. But then the study goes on to talk about that there are an estimated 313,000 victims of human trafficking in the state of Texas. Now, in addition, the study states that there are approximately 79,000 minor and youth victims of sex trafficking.
Absolutely.
And the numbers have increased during the pandemic.
Sure. Wow.
So when you talk about violence and terrorism, and Luke 6 and 19, I believe it is, it talks about, and they that were vexed with unclean spirits. And when they came to Jesus, Jesus healed them all. There are people in our society, maybe living down the block from us, maybe working with us, who have unclean spirits. An unclean spirit is the way that they think, because it's influencing the way that they think, the way they act, and the way they behave. And so if these numbers by this study of the University of Texas are correct, if they're correct, almost 400,000 men and women, including teens and children, are going to bed and waking up in the morning victims of terror and violence right here in the state of Texas. So Chaplain, how do we help the people of God? Number one, because see again, I'm convinced the only thing that's sustaining our nation are the prayers of the righteous.
I believe that too.
Because when you consider these heinous, wicked, violent acts against humanity, but see, that's the devil's only purpose, which is to rob, kill, and destroy. So Chaplain, again, now all of us, most of us that are listening, we have children, we have grandchildren.
Absolutely.
I got 11 grandchildren, and when I think again, because what the study suggests or talks about is that they'll find orphan children or children that are living on the streets and turn them into prostitutes, turn them into all. And so, Chaplain, we have some wicked, heinous thinking in our society. How do we help the people of God to recognize again? We have to stand in the gap both naturally and spiritually. How do we help the people of God with this dilemma?
You know what, Dr. Cruz, you listed a lot of traumas that's taking place in society. You know, the victimization of children, the stresses in which we're facing in the society through COVID, all of that, it's a lot. You know, the song pops in my head, Marvin Gaye, makes me want to holler, waiting for my life. You know, when I think about what we do, you know, as a chaplain, but also training as a clinician at the Family Life, you know, Center at Fort Hood, you know, one of the things that we work on to try to restore a person's mind and heart, and I want to broaden the umbrella. I don't want to necessarily box my answer and leave out those who perhaps don't really view God as perhaps in the way in which we view God.
Right.
But certainly God can never be left out of the conversation.
Right. Right.
We find again in the signs of helping people in terms of the modalities, we also have to include God in the conversation. And so here it is, when a person has been traumatized, if you will, by the level of stresses, the frustrations, the anxieties of so many things over a period of time, it will cause havoc upon the body. The emotions and the mind begin to deteriorate, shut down. If the stresses are not dealt with, the body was not meant to carry that kind of stress for a long period of time. You have the fight or flight syndrome, but that's for over a period of time when you're hunting or trying to gather or you're trying to get out of danger. But just think about this. Can I push the envelope? Can we dig deep in this thing? Because I know we following some things, but if the person experience this type of lies or this type of stresses, this type of anxiety over a long period of time, and mind you, there are cultures who have been dealing with stresses and anxieties for a long time and just suck it up and keep driving. And so as a result, mental illness has increased. Heart, diabetes, strokes, all of those things begin to deplete the body. And so as I said, when we look at the stress over an extended period of time without any relief, it can cause strokes, heart problems, mental illness, all kinds of functional outcomes that's found in the DSM. And those who know what the DSM is, that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, continually increasing. If these things are not addressed, nothing is really resolved. And so as chaplains and studying as clinicians to help restore people, is that we must be willing to go to the depth of where they are. There is a level of depth a person needs to go to become whole. Don't tune out. I want you to stay with me. The level of depth that a person needs to go, we have to take them there. We have to be willing to go with them. Often, we as a person, any of us is going deeper into that area of soul wounds. Oftentimes, they can change the subject or divert the attention to quickly move past the hurt and the pain. And so we must dive deeper with them as a clinician, as a therapist, pastor, mom, pop, dad, as one who is willing to help someone to get through those traumas. You know, Dr. Crew, they too must be in touch with their own vulnerability. Can I further this for a moment? See, this is the place. This is the place where we have to become comfortable with ambiguity. You have to deal with your own traumas. You have to deal with your own biases. You have to deal with your own fears and your own limitations and anything else that has wounded your own soul, that has the potential to get in the way of going deeper with that person who's trying to get whole. Now, this doesn't mean, I want to say this, preface this doesn't mean that you begin to bring up your own issues and you begin to bleed all over people. It's not about you. It is about allowing that person to explore the depth of where they are so they can face their trauma and come out renewed and whole. The last statement as we move on, as we further the question, I know we want to dive deeper. I just envision going diving, right? As a master, if you are a master diver, as you take your individuals with you to dive, as you go deeper, you begin to change the oxygen. If you don't, you begin to cause all kind of havoc. You can blank out all of that. But as you dive deeper, you're changing the oxygen levels. But as that diver, you're watching those who are with you. And if they begin to spaz out, panic, you bring them up slowly. You make that eye contact with them. You bring them to a calm and resolution, change the oxygen to go back deeper. Because this is where we want to go, to that place of depth where they can touch those soul wounds, Dr. Crew, so they can find the level of making themselves whole.
And the challenge, of course, you know, as you have so laid out for us, you know, with that response, is helping people to overcome the past. Because
Absolutely.
The past is like that 800-pound gorilla.
Absolutely.
That's been on your back.
Yeah.
Because our minds are like a warehouse.
Absolutely.
And if in fact neuroscientists and neuropsychologists tell us we have anywhere from 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day.
That's a lot of thoughts.
And half of them are negative.
That's right.
And if in fact, let's take those 60,000 thoughts and multiply that times 30 days. That's 1,800,000 thoughts in 30 days. And potentially 900,000 of them are negative. And it's important for us to know and understand you don't have to be a negative person.
You do not.
To have negative thoughts.
Absolutely.
And so with this being a military community, many of the listeners, veterans and retirees, active duty, things of that nature, most of us have understood or have seen some of this in action.
Yeah, we have.
Because when we think about the tragedy of Vanessa Gillian in April last year, because of what we understand was a sexual harassment that led to sexual assault, that led to her being bludgeoned to death. The thoughts of the perpetrator, and then the fact that who did she have to talk to about what she was thinking? It has been said that elephants never forget. Our problem is we forget too quickly.
That's good.
And some of us may recall again, with being a military community, in 2002, in a 6-week time frame, 4 wives of soldiers at Fort Bragg were murdered.
Yeah.
Each death was by their husbands. 2 of the soldiers that killed their wives then killed themselves as well. According to a USA Today report dated October 1st, 2020, the suicide rate amongst active duty troops increased to a 6-year high. So now the Pentagon's report says that's about 26 soldiers per 100,000. For veterans or retirees, the suicide rate, according to the latest Veterans Affairs report, is about 17 suicides a day. And we can attribute these suicides to what we talked about, you mentioned earlier, helplessness and hopelessness, and transforming the minds of people that are in pain and feeling as though there's no way out. So this passage of scripture helps me tremendously. In Mark chapter 5, verse 15, it says, when they found Jesus, first of all, they found Jesus. We're talking about a kingdom mindset. They found Jesus.
That's right.
Then they saw the demonized man sitting there, clothed and in his right mind. The word mind in this passage, it literally means sane. He was in his right mind. He was sane where he had been insane. In the tombs, cutting himself, shrieking day and night, wanting to live amongst that which was dead, apparently not wanting to live. So here's this man when they, number one, they found Jesus. I think our challenge as the people of God is to help people to find Jesus. Because Jesus is the one. This text helps me tremendously because when they found Jesus, everybody in town knew this man. They knew him. They probably heard him at night, shrieking in the tombs, living amongst the dead. When they found Jesus, when Jesus got through them, he was sitting and clothed in his right mind, which also means a balanced mind. And so, but now here's the other part of that text. The people were terrified because they couldn't believe what just happened. What in the world? What's going on here? We know who this man was. Now, who is this man, Jesus? So chaplain, as a family life chaplain, tasked to provide counseling to people that may be terrified by what they have seen or experienced. How do we help people, as you talked about, be transformed? How do we help people to be reborn? How do we help them to be reborn after being victimized and terrorized? How do we help them to be reborn?
That's another beautiful question. That's a great question. This is what I've seen working as a clinician, as we're working toward licensure. First of all, in order to create a brighter future, brighter or better future, the past, you mentioned this earlier, is that the past has to be dealt with in the present. Okay? We can't change the past. We can't turn back the hands of time and get a do-over. I haven't created
no time machine.
the DeLorean
back to
go back. No.
That ain't happening.
But the past is what bruises us. We remember those scars. And here it is, even when you forget, when the mind shuts down because the pain has been so traumatized, the body remembers. The body remembers that pain. It remembers the smell, it remembers the hurt, all of those things. So we have to. We don't deal with if we don't deal with the past, it is inevitable that in the present we create a crisis that negates our future.
You
like that, man? That was good, man.
I said that one more time.
I said that if we don't deal with the past, it is inevitable that in our present we create a crisis that negate our future. And here's the beauty: is a person can be this is beautiful. I'm a witness of my own self. Is that a person can be at the peak, at the apex of getting ready to get out, but their past has become so familiar that we self-sabotage ourselves. You see, as I told you, the body. There's an amazing book says the body keeps the score. If we become so familiar with past traumas and past pains, and we don't deal with the past in our present, this is where the energy takes place.
If we don't deal with if we don't deal with the past in our present,
that's right.
Okay.
The future is going to be the same repetitive cycle. New face, but same issues.
Okay.
New location,
wow,
but same drama. new job,
Mm-hmm.
but self-sabotaging yourself again over and over.
Mm.
And so here it is. It's you know, it's not intentional either. It is the subconscious mind taking over.
Okay.
Right? Our bodies, as I said, the body remember. And so as that body is saying, oh my God, what is this? This is new. Oh my God, I don't like this new. Let me recreate what I'm used to. And so we deal with the traumas right here. It is in our present we learn to affirm our worth. It is in our present we practice mindfulness. It is in our present that we choose to go get help. And here it is now, it is in our present we begin to war within. Yeah.
Well, Chaplain, that's powerful, man. And again, when I think about, in essence, our topic for tonight, a kingdom mindset, and you mentioned it earlier, Proverbs 23:7, as a man or woman thinks, that's who they really are.
Absolutely.
And when I think again about this journey that we are on as helpers of the Lord, as ministers, as co-laborers, helping people to learn to think like God thinks.
Sure.
So God says to Isaiah the prophet, and as we know, the message is always first to the messenger before it's given to the people. So God says to Isaiah in Isaiah 55, Isaiah, we got a problem, man. Your thoughts are not my thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So in essence, as I reflect upon that text, that means that as pastors, as leaders, as ministers, as evangelists, as prophets, whatever, we are not exempt from that that command or that conversation that God had with Isaiah. And it's not that we don't think like God thinks. It's not that our ways are not like God's ways. But the challenge for us in our human experience is to learn to think more like God thinks, so that our ways can be more like God's ways. And so now that's the spiritual. Now the science, the natural tells us that we have three categories that make up our thought patterns or the human experience. There's negative thoughts about self. There's negative thoughts about the world and the way we see the world, and negative thoughts, what you talked about the future. So, Chaplain, with that understanding, negative thoughts about self, how we beat ourselves up and beat ourselves down based on our own self-esteem or lack thereof. Negative thoughts about self, negative thoughts about the world. Bad news ain't gonna make me change my mind because God is still sovereign. But yet, we have negative thoughts about the world. And then negative thoughts about the future. So, Chaplain, what steps can we take to personally, the health fitness experts, they talk about